All right, we're off and running. Welcome to the May Penn Bello. Brian, are we off and running? Okay. Welcome to the May Penn Bello team meeting with special guests, I think, from club. Who's club team? Anybody club members here? Thanks for coming. We like to get you guys out and sort of suck you in over the course of time. May race meeting, I thought a great opportunity to sort of reflect on who we are since the club's here as well, a few people. Really excited for tonight, so I'm gonna bust through this quick. Topics. Typical stuff, I'm going to blast through it, so I'm not even going to let you read it. Off we go. We got more important things than me. Focus in HIT, we're coming to a peak for most people around sort of Memorial Day stage race, a little bit into June, and then we'll reset training plans towards a July and August race series, because June is pretty good, but not great. July is great now with the Brisbane criterium, and August is big. So pretty safe. Now, especially as it gets hotter and hotter, hydrate, err on the side of less fatigue in your training on a weekly basis, right? You're starting to try to, ideally, CTL will start to sort of taper as you go into that peak and racing phase, right? You're not trying to gain CTL all year. You want to enjoy the benefits as the intensity stays high and ramps up. Some of the group rides going off are really quick now. Mountain biking, of course, is high on everyone's list. It's high intensity, so let's do that. Anyway. I'm also working, guys, on polarizing training a little bit more. The classic model is sort of, not to get too scientific, but 2 millimoles of lactate versus 4+ millimoles of lactate. It's not quite that scientific at this point, but I am trying to take out sort of the intermediate miles and some of the sweet spot. That should be pretty well established with you guys at this point in the season. So rest really hard, train really hard, because the ask of what I want out of the intervals will go up. Okay, since you're not doing all that sweet spot and climbing repeats on 20-minute climbs, now we can do more volume of VO2, anaerobic, FRC, all that stuff. Good. Questions real quick? Excellent. Racing update. Okay, so we added one win last month. That was Vaughn winning Copperopolis. But we did add 36 top 10s. So big gap, also a big gap between my top 3s, adding 13 this month. Those are missed opportunities. If we're in the top 3, we should be competing better for the win. Okay, we want to get in there and analyze what we did wrong, and if it's a question and answer thing, talk to me. If it's meeting with your teammates, work on that. Later in the schedule, we'll cover some stuff team-oriented this month, but I'd really like to see that ratio 13-to-1 get better in the coming months, so focus on that. You can look across your categories. Again, we only added really the one win from Yvonne, but a few other categories moved up. We put some people into the bar in the women. On the next page, 35 masters, 55 masters. We get to racing updates on standing. Still in 4th. There have been some movement on some of the individual categories, mostly down, so losing stuff. But we weren't super active racing last month, okay? Which is too bad because it was a really great month. So if you're watching this, and you haven't raced, we need you. So come race. Okay, this is going well. Focus race, I'm not going to cover most of it tonight. I'll cover it at the Discord on the 24th at 7 p.m. Plan a little longer if you're coming to Discord. It's got 3-4 stages. There's a lot to cover, right? Still okay on sound? Good. Breakdowns, etc. Focus races left, Hamilton districts. Brisbane is now on a focus race calendar for July, because not only do we want you to work, we want you to race too. So put in your mind the best day of your life, because you get to race and work for the team. Red Kite later, and then August race to be determined. If you have suggestions, I'm happy to take them. We can also look at maybe something in September, although usually cyclocross kind of takes over then. And the May calendar. More stuff during the week. We added that bi-weekly Thursday ride. I also put at the bottom that you guys are welcome to join me on the Tuesday ride. We're going to alternate between the Bicycle Outfitter one Tuesday and Page Mill. Page Mill happens to be the 15th and the 29th, since most of you live north. You're welcome to come out and do that. It's a structured training ride. Usually, 5 to 10 of my athletes come out and we goof off for an hour and a half or 2 hours, especially June, July, because it gets dark late. We can have a lot of fun. If you are coming, let me know so I don't either misanticipate a route or not wait for you. Okay, last but not least, we're getting to the presentation from Pioneer Power Meters. We're really lucky to have, I really can't wait, I'm excited. Nathan O'Neill here. Australian 8-time, 10-time including younger categories, national champion, Olympian, raced the Vuelta, raced the Giro, won Tour de Beauce. Anyway, knowledgeable guy who's spent, how long have you been with Pioneer now?
Coming up 3 years now.
Spent the last 3 years digging deep into what we're going to talk about tonight. So the wealth of information coming at you guys may seem overwhelming at times, but we'll take a couple breaks during. Ask questions as they come up, but it's a lot of information. Let's try not to push poor Nathan under the bus. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass the microphone off and we're rolling.
Well, thanks guys, appreciate you having me here tonight. Was a short hop from Atlanta today, but I'm glad to be here. My arms are pretty tired, long flight, but anyway. Yeah, let's learn a little bit about Pioneer. Most of you guys have got the product right now, I think. Raise your hand if you don't have the product yet. Okay, are you guys looking at it right now? Are you sort of thinking, do you have power at all right now? Yeah, you do, okay. So I don't have to do too much of a hard sell, but I'll do my best. I guess the main objective tonight is just to give you guys a quick intro into some of the setup, some of the mechanical features of it. Some of this is for the mechanics in the workshop as well, so I'll kind of go through that in the beginning. Then we'll get into talking a little bit about some of the features of the product, how you can get yourself into trouble, how you can get yourself out of trouble with it. And then also we'll talk about some of the other the analysis tools, so Cyclosphere mostly, the web-based tool, our new app that we have, things of that nature. So let's get going. First of all, the first thing you've got to wrap your head around with Pioneer is it's a multi-channel system. So you have essentially 2 different bands, 3 different modes, 2 different bands. You have a private mode, which we transmit all of our HD data across, and you have a standard ANT Plus signal that everybody else is familiar with and you can connect any other computer to. Out of the box, the most important thing to know is a crankset's going to come to you in the standard ANT Plus mode. So if you're not running our computer, and from this point forward we're going to be talking pretty much about everything that utilizes our computer and leverages those functions. But if you're not using our computer, it's a simple matter of putting a crankset on the bike, no magnets required, pair it with a Garmin, pair it with a Wahoo, zero it, ride it, you're done. Really simple, okay? If you want to get into our metrics, stay tuned because we're about to get going with it. If you do have a Garmin, and we'll say you have a Garmin and our computer and you want to time together, there is a rebroadcasting feature built into our computer that will actually turn our computer essentially into an ANT Plus power meter. So your Garmin sees our computer as a power meter. So it pushes HD data to our computer, then it bounces it across in an ANT Plus signal to a watch or a standard computer in an ANT Plus format. So for triathletes, it's kind of cool because they can capture their entire race on the watch and they can get their HD data on their head unit. So, like I said, there's 3 different modes. There's two ANT Plus modes and there's a Pioneer mode. The way to switch the mode is using our computer. There's a mode switch feature built into it. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're not sure what mode you're in, all you got to do is pull the batteries out, put the batteries back in, and look for the colored light that you see. You'll see one of 3 different color lights. You'll see a solid orange light, that will tell you you're in ANT Plus dual mode. You'll see a flashing orange light, which will tell you that you're in single mode. And then you'll also see a solid green light for 10 seconds, tells you you're in Pioneer mode. Okay, so if you're troubleshooting and you can't get connected for whatever reason, your first thing to do is pull the batteries out, put the batteries back in, look for the light, that'll tell you where you're at, okay? Everybody good on that so far? Okay.
One question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that with Garmin, etc., no magnets needed.
Yep.
Would a magnet be useful on a left crank only Pioneer system with the Pioneer engine?
No. If you're using magnets with our system, you need to have 2 magnets because it will throw the system into confusion. It will, half the system will see a magnet, half the system won't.
Oh, I mean left only crank.
Oh, left only crank?
Yes.
Single or dual, well, single or dual, it's better with a magnet, but in certain situations, magnets are a little tough to fit, and Trek is one of them, obviously, and if you're not using our pedaling metrics, rather than put yourself through all the heartburn of trying to figure out how to put the magnet on there, it works without magnets. There are some situations where using magnets is still better. If you're on a really rough surface, for example, magnets are going to give you a better performance. Other situations would be if you've got You have to be really not smooth in your pedaling technique, but if you were really rough in your technique, it would sometimes confuse those accelerometers just a touch, and you might see some dropouts.
So it does cadence without magnets?
It will do cadence without magnets. It's better with magnets always. That's the rule of thumb, okay? But if you can't make magnets work and you're not using our head unit, it's okay. Waking up the crankset, really simple. Put it on the bike, spin the crank 6 or 7 times. Accelerometers will wake it up if you're not using magnets. If you're in Pioneer mode, you need the magnets to wake the system up. They won't wake up without magnets. Okay, that's a really important point to remember here. So if you lose a magnet and you're in Pioneer mode, that sensor's not going to wake up by itself just by spinning it. So magnet positioning, you can get a little bit creative on this, and I know we've talked a little bit about this when we first got here. The magnets can go anywhere in that radius of the circle. So they're a set distance from the left side and the right side from the center. They're different. They don't have to line up with each other, so they can be, one could be on the down tube, for example, the other could be on the chainstay, on opposite sides of the bike. It doesn't matter. You're going to tell the system where they're at when you do a magnet calibration. But the most important thing is to get them aligned up. So for example, on the left side, this distance here needs to be 53 millimeters from center to center. On the right side, it would be 42 millimeters from center to center. Okay, there's a little template card that comes with it. Use the template card if you're replacing your magnets. Really, really critical. This is probably the most important part of the entire setup system. It's, if you get this wrong, you'll have problems. Yeah.
I just had a question. So I set mine up over the weekend.
Yep.
And I have a Cannondale Super 6. I had to use 2 of the little foam spacers with
To-
a magnet on that left side.
To get the distance.
And I saw a reference to a different type of magnet that looks like a pole or an arm.
Yeah.
I didn't see that in my kit.
Yeah, we don't supply those anymore. They're old, because if they get bumped around, and patch magnets are.
That sounds like the way to do it. The 2 spacers.
Yep. Yeah. Now the distance, the sideways distance, the range is 1.5 millimeters to 10.7 millimeters. So you can be pretty far away. Bearing in mind though, the closer you get it, the better it is. Okay. You're going to get better battery life when it's closer, and propensity for less dropouts essentially. So you want it to be as close as possible, but it will work up to about 10 millimeters. So just bear that in mind.
The radial tolerance of the 42 millimeters?
42 millimeters.
Okay.
Yeah.
And less than a micron?
A millimeter. I mean, it's a plastic template. But essentially, 43, I mean, the more accurate you can be with it, the better performance you'll get.
Just to clarify, you came to Silicon Valley, so I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I'm Australian. I'm way out of my depth here. It's all right.
One more question. I get to install that, and so for the right side, you use the crank from the other, wrong way in to use the template?
You can do that, yeah. You can use that if you want to, yeah.
Let's keep those questions for the end, just so that we can get through everything else.
Yeah, you can do it that way. So pairing it to your crankset, who hasn't done this yet, by the way? Who hasn't sort of set it up yet? Who's got their cranks, they're kind of going, oh, what do I do? Okay, so this is really simple, and I do this every single day over the phone. I can do this in my sleep. It's a little weird at first, but it's really simple. Turn the computer on, mash the menu button on the left-hand side of the screen. This is once you've got the magnets on, okay? Press the option button on the screen. Go to pedaling settings. Go to mode switch. Now, you want to type in the 2 ID numbers of the cranks that you have. You do that by simply literally touching on the screen right there, and it's going to open up a little keypad. Bash in your numbers, hit the enter button. Same thing the other side. Check both those check boxes there, because you're going to send a command to both of those sensors, and you're telling it whatever I select below is going to go to these sensors. If you just wanted to mess with one of them, you'd uncheck one, and it would just leave that one checked, for example, and you would do that. You put all that in like that, and you hit pedaling monitor. And it's going to say sending command, success, add sensors to the list, you're done. Simple. Okay, so at that point, you are paired and you are mode switched. All in one. Okay? You can go backwards. You could just simply do you could actually go back. You could repeat this again. You could type in the same numbers here, choose a different mode, select the sensors and go again. It'll put them in the correct mode again. Just make sure the cranks are awake before you do it. Magnet calibration. Big problem here that people have is they don't put the bike level on the ground or in a stand. It's got to be level. Okay? Reason is because we're doing a scan based on degrees in the circle. We need to know that 12 o'clock needs to be 0 degrees based on where the accelerometers are. So if the bike's like this, all your vectors are all going to be all back to front and whatnot. And always pedal the bike forwards. So it's right in that same menu, pedaling settings, magnet calibration, start calibration. Everybody with me so far? Who's done this? You know what I'm talking about. Okay, cool. When you hit start calibration, it'll switch to a little display here, and it'll say 0 out of 5 on each side. You need to get 5 rotations on both sides. When you get to 5 rotations, it says 5 out of 5. You can go further, but it won't matter. You'd hit save, and you're done.
How important is battery charge when you do your calibration? I ended up swapping my batteries out. One of them was, I thought it was less than 2.8.
Sometimes, depending on where the cranks, if they've been stored in a hot warehouse or a cold warehouse over the winter, you could have subpar batteries in there to begin with. So first thing I do is pull the factory batteries out and put some good energizers in there or something like that. Magnet calibration, after that, you're set, hit save, success, and you're done. You only have to do the magnet calibration every single time you, for example, if you take that crankset and you put it on another bike and you have different magnet positioning, you need to do it again. Really important thing to remember is the magnet position is stored in the crankset, not in the head unit. So you could swap out head units all day long, you would never have to do that procedure again. Cranks and the bike are married together. Okay? You do the magnet calibration, you're set. The computer itself is really cool. It's got 5 different bike profiles in there. So if you've got multiple bikes, you can select different bike profiles and have one set up for your road bike, your race bike, your cross bike, your time trial bike, whatever. And all of the sensors that you pair with each of those profiles is only accessed when you're in that profile. You probably may have discovered that already. One of the questions I get from people is they go in there and they're like one day they fire it up and they're like, none of my sensors are there, what's going on? I'm like, what bike profile are you in? And they didn't even know there was a different bike profile. So check your bike profile and make sure that you're dialed into the right one. You can't pair more than 2 cranks to one bike profile, okay? So it's 1 heart rate monitor, 1 speed sensor, 1 crankset, 1 Di2 module. What am I missing? That's about it, right? What else do we have these days? 1 EKG. In any case, that's kind of another concept that you really need to understand and remember. 0 cal, you should do this every single time you ride before you set out, just to make sure your cranks are really stable, but just to make sure they're perfect. Just spin the cranks a few times, wake them up, hit menu again, hit option, go to 0 cal, it's right at the top of the screen, the first thing you see. Put the cranks vertical, hit calibrate. Okay? Wait, it'll say success, left, success right, and you're done. Occasionally, things go wrong and you don't get a calibration. It'll say timeout or something of that nature, okay? 9.9 times out of 10, it's an easy fix, okay? So what do you do when you see a timeout? And this is the most common thing you'll see when you go to calibrate. So make sure your cranks are awake. Okay, is there a magnet on there? Is your magnet missing? That would explain why it's not waking up. Okay, so check that first. Maybe you didn't spin them far enough. You only spun it 3 or 4 times. It might need 5, 6, 7 RPMs to kind of wake up. Do that, check that out. Again, magnets missing, verify and replace your magnets. Sometimes low battery voltage can cause a problem, like you said. If you're getting low in your voltage, it might give you an error, okay? These are things that you'll see you'll see commonly, but you may see from time to time. Other things that can go wrong, you might see an error 2, error 3, error 6. I don't expect you to remember all this, but just for reference, error 2, low battery, okay? That's what error 2 means. Error 3, this is on calibration, by the way. Error 3 means there's Wi-Fi. We're in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of noise here. You're gonna have stuff bouncing all over the place. Literally, all you have to do sometimes is go 20 feet that way and try again. Even turn the bike 90 degrees to the way it was. We'll sometimes fix it, okay? And then finally, error 6, vibration. You're riding it, which you shouldn't have been doing, or it's in a work stand and a mechanic's there jiggling the bike on the other side, cutting a steerer tube or something, you know, and the other guy on the other side's trying to zero the cranks out. That'll give you an error 6. Yeah?
And when you do the calibration, is it important to always do the same crank, like you do the right crank up?
If If you have a dual system, it doesn't matter, as long as they're vertical. If you have a single system, we recommend putting the crank arm that you're zeroing, put it in the down position. Yeah.
Is temperature a factor, being in a car wash versus outside?
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's no compensation otherwise?
There is. Like I said, these are factory temperature comped, depending on the model you have. If you have an older, if you had a 9000 or a 6800 crankset, the old V sensors, they have a memory that you have to establish. The 9100 and the 8000 are factory comped. So we heat them in the oven, we factory calibrate them from 50 degrees centigrade all the way down to practically freezing. And we do that in the factory. So we check the offset and we tell them exactly how they're supposed to behave at those varying temperatures. But again, they're pretty stable for that reason, but we still recommend checking them, just giving a little kick in the line. That could be a little bit off by a little bit. If you're using a head unit, you'll see live force numbers on the screen. You might notice that. You'll see radians and tangent numbers, positives and negatives. That tells you how close you are to zero. If you see within 3 of 0, plus or minus 3, you're okay. If you see a wild number that's out in the 15s and 20s, zero it, okay? Occasionally, people just say, hey man, my power meter just doesn't work. So what am I supposed to do? Again, just to rehash, check your magnets. Are they both there? Is the sensor awake? Remove your batteries, reinsert them and check your LEDs. Check for the mode, okay? Make sure your mode is correct. Look for solid green lights if you're using our head unit. Again, replace the batteries or mode switch if that's what you need to do. This button's not working. And then also last thing, check your sensor list on your computer to make sure that the sensors are actually there or you're actually in the correct profile, okay? And if you don't have a pedaling monitor left or right in there, just add the sensors. Look at menu, sensors, add your sensors. Away you go. Let's see. We're good. Okay. You guys know about this computer. It's pretty powerful stuff. I'm not going to go into all of the stuff that we will go into it, but not right now. We're not going to go into it. But there's a lot going on with it. I think it's the most underrated computer out in the market right now. But there are 5 really fundamental things that you need to make sure you have dialed in on this computer before it will work the way you want it to work. Number 1, you need a cyclosphere.com account. It's free. You go online, sign yourself up for it. Take that email address, take that password, key it into the computer, okay? You'll also need a Wi-Fi password. You need to teach it at least one network to be able to upload your data. You can teach it multiple networks, but it just needs at least one. I use my phone hotspot, for example, as a good one. That way I've always got it with me. But I'll teach it at my home, my office, the coffee shop. It'll work with anything that has it'll give you an open IP address. So if you're at a hotel and it's asking you to click through a bunch of acknowledgements, that's not going to work. But if you can sign in with a password and get an IP address, you're good. Make sure that your ANC Plus sensors are added as well. So speed, speed, heart rate, they're all added as well. Make sure that auto upload is selected in the menu. I'll show you where that is. And then if you like, this is an optional thing, there's also an auto power off feature. So for me, when I come down my driveway, I get to my mailbox, I hit stop, I hit reset, it uploads. By the time I get to my front door, my data's already online. I walk inside, I lean my bike against the wall, I get in the shower. 9 times out of 10, I forget to turn it off. So the power off feature is good. 20 minutes later, it shuts down. So the next day when I go to ride, if I get to go ride, you know how it is, I've got a head unit that's got some juice in it. So that's always a good thing. Cyclosphere, you put your settings in right here. It's menu, option, Cyclosphere setting right there. Email address, password, and you're set. Auto upload is right there. Check that box right down the bottom there. This is the same menu. This is just the same flow right here. Okay. Who's done this? Okay, so you guys all know this. All right.
I'm still doing my old school. I connected it up with a cable and just let it.
What? What? We still ship cables with these things?
Any old USB cable will work.
I'm kidding. I know shipping with the cable.
But there was a cable involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it old school.
Okay, cool.
And it works.
Awesome. Wi-Fi settings, same thing. Menu settings, Wi-Fi settings, scan for networks, find your network, touch it, punch in your password, and you're set. It'll just remember them all. I don't know how many you can set it to. I've got more than 30 in there. Everywhere I go, I dial it in. The other thing you should probably do, if you haven't already done already, is update your firmware. Who's done that? Okay, so you all know how to do that? Okay. Anybody not know how to do that? Okay, we'll skip on. Logging and uploading a ride. Pretty simple, I know, but believe it or not, some people still don't do it properly. Hit the start button. That's really key, because I know it sounds stupid, but I had one guy call me the other day and he's like, I don't know why it's not recording any data, and I'm getting speed and I'm seeing all these numbers, but I'm not getting any distance. And I said, did you hit start? It's kind of like the whole thing, did you turn it on? And he said no, and he said this message kept popping up saying movement detected. And I was like, dude, that's what that means. In any case, start, ride, stop, reset for 3 seconds. It'll turn on Wi-Fi. If you've done all that other stuff we said before, auto upload, if that's all turned on, it'll upload and you're done. You all done that? Who's experienced how cool this is? Yeah.
So I actually didn't read the manual, and I hit stop, and I got in, and I was like, okay, waiting for more data, where's the data? And nothing happened. And then I had to read the manual and said, oh, I got to hit reset.
Reset, and we got, where did it all go? It's all cleared out, right? Yeah. So the flow is pretty simple. Everything goes to Cyclosphere, and then it bounces to Training Peaks and Strava, Facebook, Twitter, so everybody know that you rode, because that's what matters. Also, another website, Today's Plan, I think we're also piped in with as well. You can set that up very simply. You go online to our main website on your laptop or your desktop and just configure it. Just hit the settings tab up here, click on web link, and then just click on link and just give it your credentials and it's done. That's good. Training Peaks, the same way. Just give it permission one time and you're in. The touchscreen rotation has a set. There's 6 different screens. There's a bunch of standard settings. You can change them if you like. Page settings are very simple. There's 6 different page settings, 16 different landscapes, multiple different metrics. You guys, if you've had a chance to play with this thing yet, you've probably figured out some of this stuff already, but I don't mess with the page sets personally. I think the way they're set up to begin with is perfectly fine. I want to change some of the metrics around. The way to change the metrics is really simple. You literally just hold down I'll script over here. You literally just hold down a metric, long push, it pulls up a menu, cycle through, find your setting, what you want. There's more metrics in there than you can poke a stick at. I mean, it's ridiculous. In some ways, it's almost too much, but if you've got a coach that's a little quirky that, wants you to look at real-time interval intensity, for example, and nobody else has that, we have it. Okay, we have all that crazy stuff. The other thing we have too, which is really cool, is we have a free training system, Training Assist. Who's heard of this? You guys you were at the presentation with Russ and Brenda here. You probably heard a little bit about this.
Today, because I was looking at the left-right balance. It's a very basic training assist.
Yep.
That's something I want to work on.
Yep. So there's lots of different elements in there. There's an FTP test in there. There's some power training modules. You can configure. Some of them are set. Some of them you can configure yourself. I did a short little video on my phone last night to sort of demonstrate how easy it is to set up the workouts. Basically, it utilizes the last 3 months of your. It's going to play. No, it was playing. Let me go back. So when you go in there, it utilizes the last 3 months of your data to populate the fields. So it learns you. The more data you put in, the smarter it gets. So this situation, what we want to do is we're going to get a training assist. We want to, this is on the mobile site, by the way. We want to set up an interval training session. We're going to do 5x10s. We're going to get little hold my beerish, and we're going to say 280 watts. And we're going to do 5 of those, and we're going to have 10 minutes recovery in between. So it's a simple matter of just scrolling to the bottom, training menu, scroll all the way to the very bottom, wave, there we go. And you'll notice that it's populated already at 150 watts right here, because that's what it thinks I can do. But I'm going to change that in a second. You can set the 10-minute, the timer, or whatever you want it to be for each interval. Rest time is right there below it. Target wattage right there. interval target. Like I said, I'm going to get a little bold here. And you're literally doing this on your phone before you leave the house in a Wi-Fi environment, okay? Or anywhere we have Wi-Fi for that matter, okay? When that's all set up how you want it, I'm going to do 5 times, and you can do, I'm going to do an extended warm-up here, and then I'm going to hit, the very bottom I'm going to hit where it says training menu creation. Menu's been created, okay? Done. Now, the next thing I would do is I would take my computer and I would go in here and I would hit menu, I would touch on training and go to training assist, and actually don't have the screenshot here, but it would be download menu. You hit download menu, it turns on Wi-Fi, it logs on, finds the workout that you just created and pushed up into the cloud, pulls it down into the head unit, it's local. Now you can go out and ride. And it's in the head unit, okay? And it's in there until you delete it. But essentially, you go out and you ride, you get out to where you want to do your ride, where you're going to do the interval set out in the, some quiet road out there or whatever. You go back in here, you start your timer like normal, do your ride, get out there where you're going to go and do it. Menu, training, training assist, scroll through to find the workout, hit start challenge. Or start interval. And it will just start the timer and it will tell you what to do. It'll say, all right, warm up 15 minutes at X watts. And then it will tell you first interval, here it is, 280 watts, 10 minutes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And while you're doing it, this is what you're looking at. Really simple, no BS, just the basic stuff. Looking at your average, your rolling average for the workout, your target that you're shooting for, what you're currently doing, and how much time you've got left to do it. Super motivating. So these 2 metrics at the bottom, the rolling average on the left and the target on the right, I want those to be lined up. That just keeps me motivated. I was doing these the other day, and there's no way in hell I would have been able to finish all of them on point if I hadn't have had that looking at me in the face, keeping me honest. It was really, really motivating for me. Who's played with this? Anybody? Nobody? All right, you're all going to have fun with this. Yeah, good stuff.
Does it have sound when you come to the end of an interval?
It'll beep at you. It'll beep at you, yep. It'll tell you, yep. And then it'll flash up and it'll tell you recovery, 10 minutes, there's your next point. Just like following a map, basically. Interval timer is much the same thing. These are set up on the computer though itself, kind of little bit more fiddly, I guess, in a way. But they're all uniform, so you would just do it to be like 5 on, 5 off, 5 on, 5 off, or if you want some kind of shorter workout like that. Threshold training, same thing. The FTP test, again, that's set up with your phone. You dial in there, it's going to suggest a target for you based on what it thinks you can do, and it will walk you through a structured warm-up, standardized warm-up, do your FTP test, and then it'll give you those numbers, and then it'll remember that FTP, and then it knows that, and then it'll base all of your other numbers off of that. So you use your indoor trainer for that, so it's kind of standardized, you know, you don't have any other external influences kind of getting in the way, traffic and so on. One other cool thing we added in the last update, sprint detection. It's kind of getting in there. We sample data at every 1 second, essentially. We're sampling a lot higher than that, but we're reporting it every 1 second. We're averaging it, we're reporting it every 1 second. When you go over 90% of your 10-second number or 90% of your 30-second number, it switches to half-second sampling. And you can turn that on. If you have the latest firmware in both the head unit and the cranks, you'll get that feature. And it will create an automatic lap for you. So when you go back and look at your file, you'll see an auto lap being created, sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, or in my case, dog 1, dog 2, dog 3, dog 4. I'll be like, oh yeah, I know that bastard. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that one.
I went in and entered my MMPs because I didn't have any historical data. So I manually typed them in. You can do that in like user profile or something. Will it use those or does it have to have the 3 months of data?
It will put us by, yeah, you probably, if you fed in, if you manually uploaded fit files, you said?
Well, I manually typed in, you can type in a number for your 1 second, 5 second, 10 second MMP.
Oh.
Like I looked at it at my training software and
Right.
calculated and typed it in. Will it use those?
Yeah, that's a good start. I mean, the first couple of rides you do, it's going to start populating. So yeah, that stuff doesn't change. The shorter stuff doesn't change a heck of a lot. 1 second numbers. The stuff that really changes is your 20-minute number, your 30-minute number, your 60-minute number, and so on, for sure. But sprint detection, it's pretty neat. That's the latest firmware that you need, though, right there on the end there. So November 21 of last year, that's our last firmware. So people ask us all the time, how often do you guys issue firmware? The answer is not very often, because when we do it right. We're not issuing patches constantly, trying to fix the last problem that we created when we issued this last thing. So usually twice a year, it's about all we do. We add new things. So the good stuff, after your ride, when you get back, you're looking at a bunch of dials, you're looking at vectors, or you're seeing this on the bike. What does it mean? Who can tell me what the different colors mean on the vectors?
I only learned that today. It's not in the manual anymore. You have to.
Right. Anybody? Okay. So we're talking about crank rotation in a forward direction. So we're measuring force in 4 different directions at any one time, and we're analyzing all of the forces that are on the pedals at any one point, and we're saying at every 30 degree, that's what the resultant vector is. So if it's red, it means that it's a positive force. In other words, it's contributing to forward crank rotation. Last time I checked, that was the idea. So that's a good thing. Blue, in this case, would be negative forces, which would be slowing forward crank rotation down. That's bad. Okay, everybody with me? Sorry, I don't mean. But essentially, you can look at this quickly and see more red is better, less blue is the objective. The biggest thing that people have problems with is literally in this phase of the pedal stroke, the return phase, between 6 and back up to 12. Because it's really easy to get done with the downward stroke and then just go limp and just figure out what's going on with the other leg and just let it sort of just get carried back up there again. It just hitches the free ride back up there, okay? But what you don't realize is that that leg, it's got some mass to it. Gravity sucks in a big way, and it creates a lot of backward force on the crank rotation. So, in other words, this leg that's coming into play on the left side has to contribute extra force to drive this leg up. Okay, so that's a waste of energy. If you could just lift the mass of that leg, just the mass, not pull the pedal up, but just lift its own weight to the top. Just make it self-sufficient, getting back up to top dead center again. That's what we want you to do. This system will show you how to do that. I can't tell you how to do it. You can see it, and everybody's going to have their own way of getting it done. And that's the beauty about this system too. Everyone thinks there's a magic bullet, there's special intervals you're supposed to do. There's not. It's literally, it's an exercise, a journey in self-awareness. You don't know what you don't know. Now you know. Any questions? I'm done.
What is the pedaling efficiency number? Is that
So,
a fraction of the...
yeah, so pedaling efficiency, good question. Pedaling efficiency is percentage of positive force that contributes to crank rotation. So it's positive times negative divided by negative. So yeah, so in this case, 41% of all the energy that you're putting on the pedals is actually making the cranks rotate in a forward direction. 59% in this case is not contributing to forward crank rotation. So it's either negative, slowing down, or it's inconsequential. It's going out in a radial fashion and it's not going forwards or backwards. It's just being wasted, going out into orbit somewhere.
Who has used this and has been surprised by the numbers? Like totally surprised? Or thought,
Either way,
that's
yeah,
about right.
yeah,
My efficiency is like 26%.
yeah. So that's on the lower end, but it's, no, it's okay. But when I say lower end, I mean most people start in the high 20s. Most people start in the high 20s. Very quickly, just by being made self-aware, if I called you up in 4 weeks and said, where are you at right now? I guarantee you'll tell me you're in the 30s. If you just pay attention, a little bit, not all the time. Don't want to crash into cars and stuff, but just the fact that you're actually aware of it, because it's like having your own personal coach in the gym spotting you while you're deadlifting. Like if you're trying to muscle something up without any technique, you'll get hurt, or you won't be able to lift nearly what you can lift. Your potential will never get reached. Good technique beats brute strength every day of the week.
And you're also training the muscle memory. right? So after a certain amount of time, you'll remember to do it that way.
Yeah, it just becomes ingrained. Like, I mean, I've been riding bikes for 30 years, and I'll get on a bike at, I'm going to break it just a little bit. I get on a bike at an expo, flat shoes, no clip-in pedals, and do 60% on the trainer, just because I'm lifting my leg. That's all I'm doing. People are like, how are you doing that? I'm like, I'm just lifting my foot. I'm not getting in the way of myself. And that's really what it feels like. It feels like just lifting that foot just lightly, just pulling, not pulling up necessarily, not engaging any force on the pedals, but just lightly sort of just lifting the leg. It's just think about that. Just use you find your own key words for yourselves and just use what seems natural to you, but just to achieve the same goal, just lift the foot.
Can you talk about your algorithm? So let's say that I lift one of my legs, but I don't lift the other one. Because what I think is I had an injury to this leg, and that's kind of why I bought your system.
Right.
I want to know what I don't know.
Right.
So would it affect left-right balance? So if one leg had good efficiency, but the other leg didn't, and then it was just kind of dead on the up,
Yep.
would that tend to make this the left, like this is my right leg, would that make my left leg appear to be like more like a 54?
If you're talking about balance, the one thing to realize about balance is based only on tangent force in the positive sense. Okay, so it's an ant plus metric. So it's only looking at literally at this force the entire time all the way around the circle. So efficiency is much more multidimensional. It's taking in all of the negatives and all the positives and combining it all together and saying this is what you got. But to put it in perspective, a trained amateur in the 30s without too much trouble, with some exposure to this technology. We've got some pros that are in the 50s. There's freaks out there, I realize that. At the end of the day, it's about bettering yourself. And everybody gets better with this system. I gave a system to a guy, a good friend of mine, he's kind of like my dad back in Georgia. He's not my dad, but he's like my dad. My parents are in Australia. And he used it for 5 weeks. He started out, he's been riding bikes longer than I've been alive. And he was in the high 20s when he first got on the system. I was shocked. He was shocked. He was like, I used to ride behind him for years and I think this guy's got a beautiful pedaling technique, But until you see actually the results of what's going on, you have no idea. And so 5 weeks in the system and he was in the 40s. And he didn't do anything special, and he's been riding bikes for 45 years. And so when you think you can't teach an old dog new tricks, that's not true. Just have to show people how to do it.
I have only about a week and a half's worth of data, but one thing that has popped out very obviously is that my average for a ride is usually around 38, 39%.
Yep, it's pretty good.
When I'm climbing
Yep,
at high power,
goes
all
up.
of a sudden it's more like 56.
Yep, that's normal.
Is that normal?
Yeah, it's normal because obviously more force on the pedals, lower cadences, recruiting a high number of muscle fibers.
And the harder I'm going, the better it is.
Yep. That's very typical. Conversely, the same thing is also true. If you're just noodling along in a group, just splashing around at 100 watts, just kind of like randomly, just forces going everywhere, you'll see really, really low efficiency numbers for that period of time.
My lowest one was recovery ride.
Yep. So challenge is, how do you do good styling technique on a recovery ride? That's the challenge to you.
And on dirt too.
Yeah, well, that's another element that gets a little tricky, right? We have, I'm sure you guys know Kiel Reinen, who rides for Trek Factory Racing now. When he was on United Healthcare 3 years ago, Tour of Utah, he averaged 50% for a stage of the Tour of Utah, for a 100-mile stage. That is exceptional when you think about what we just talked about, sitting in a peloton, very, very dirty pedaling technique a lot of the time, not laying on the power all the time. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The fact that he averaged 50 for 4.5 hours was pretty shocking. So he's one of those freaks I was just mentioning. That's not his data, by the way. All right. So who knows about our app? You do now? Okay. We have it. The good news is we have an app. The bad news is it's going on a little bit of maintenance right now. You can download it and use it. Some of the features are a little funky right now. I tried them this morning, and I was really bummed because I knew I was coming here, and I knew I was going to get a bunch of questions from you guys. And I was going to show you a bunch of stuff on the app itself. Mainly the training assist stuff is kind of the issue right now. So full disclosure, we know about it. We're fixing it right now. Any Android customers here? Okay. Everybody's also iOS? Yeah, of course. So Android's coming. iOS is live at the moment. But the app itself is essentially the mobile. It's taken the best stuff out of the laptop full browser version, put it into an app that buffers your data, and added some extra tools in there. We added some things like segment comparison. So for example, every time you write a segment now that you create yourself, or it will create for you based on certain parameters that you set, every time you do that segment, it will show you how many times you've done it, and you can look at all of your metrics and all of your data every time you've done one of those segments. So if you're climbing a hill, you got a climb that you do, a canyon or something that you ride, every time you ride that canyon, you can look at your efficiency. You don't have to look at what Strava gives you anymore. You can go way deeper than that now with this app. It's pretty neat.
Is there anything that it does that you can't do on your website or on the computer app?
So the mobile site that you get on your phone now, if you go to a browser, is probably the least powerful tool we have right now. The most powerful tool still is going to be the laptop, the full browser. Next would be the mobile app with the segment comparison added in there. But to be fair and to be truly transparent, the way you set up a lot of the segment comparisons for the app that you're going to access on your phone, you need to do it on the laptop, on the browser. Just it's too fiddly on a phone, just to configure that stuff in there. But this is essentially a flow when you go into when you go in there. So if I go back one page, first thing you see when you go in there, you're going to see the workout list. You touch on that, it's going to open this page up here, showing you the details of that workout. I'm going to click on segment, and then I'm going to go over here to segment, and it's going to show me all of the segments that I did on that ride. And you can name them. I've named some of these here: Woody's Gap, Wolf Pen. You know some of these, I'm sure. Up in Dahlonega. And then it also logged every single time my 5-second number, my 1 second number, my 1 minute, my 5 minute, my 20 minute number right there. And so every time, but now in future, because I've created these, every time I ride this exact geographic segment again, it's going to log it, and it's going to show me how many times I've done that segment, what I did last time, or historically everything that I've done. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. It was something the Japanese guys really wanted to do. We were like, man, I don't know, it just sounds like a little bit too much. But then the more we heard about it, the more we got to play with it, we realized that it was actually a really good feature, and it wasn't overblown. Have I gone too far? Are you guys still with me? Everybody still good? Okay, cool. Anybody got any questions right now? Like about this or anything else that we've covered already? Yeah.
A question about the rebroadcast.
Yeah.
Battery. Does that add to draining the battery?
A little bit to your head unit, yeah, just a touch.
And taking off Wi-Fi, does that help?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think actually the latest firmware, it should actually disable Wi-Fi kind of all the time. Okay. Almost to the point where people...
Just occasionally, so it knows when you get home, oh, there's some Wi-Fi, and it turns
Yep.
back on and afterwards.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The other thing is, on the head unit, on that note, on battery life, the backlight on the display, you guys know how to turn the backlight up and down on the thing? I'll show you. It's pretty cool. This is probably the... So, this is the cool thing about a touch display, is that you can actually turn it up, but you can see the backlight. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it has a backlight there. If you're out in the sun, believe it or not, the backlight doesn't matter. You can't see the benefit of the backlight. All that sucker does is suck your battery. So if you're training indoors for a period of time and you go outside, just remember to turn the backlight down.
So how did, I couldn't see.
No, I'll show you. It's turning on. When it turns on, it's simple, a matter of just swiping vertically up and down the screen. A vertical swipe will turn the brightness up and down. So it comes on. Just like
Any screen or?
any screen. Well, a training screen, not a menu. So here we are on a training screen. I'm going to brightness down,
Okay.
brightness up.
Because mine changed one one time and I didn't even know how I did it.
Yep.
I must have accidentally swiped up.
Well, you know, it's telepathic. You just think it and it does it. It's pretty cool. Yeah. What's that?
But now I know I did.
You clap? Yeah, it's a clap. It's a 70s computer. Look at that. Right. So, excuse me. So like I said, this guy is still live, the mobile site. This is like a fallback for you guys if you want to just quickly check your data. You don't have the app installed or it's giving you problems. You can always go here. It's the same URL as always, cyclo-sphere.com. Okay. You can actually, for about the last 2 years before the app came around, you can actually save this to your desktop. Save the page to your desktop, and it's an icon. You can just touch it, look, and it even looks and it has a feel like an app in that way. So, people, when I had that on my phone, people would say to me, "Well, you guys got an app?" I'm like, "No, not yet," but that's what it looked like. Anyway, that's what that looked like. If you guys have not used the app before, or rather the website, 3 different pages. I touch this screen, opens up to that page. Touch that, opens up to your vectors. Pretty simple, just the basic stuff, everything you need to know. The deeper site, Minko probably wants to talk a little bit about this. Yeah. There's some pretty interesting tools in here. People use the metrics in here in multitude of different ways. The main things that I focus on in here is obviously I'm going to look at the map where I went, what I did. The coolest thing about our map and the summary is on the main landing page, it shows you everywhere you've ridden in the entire world on one page, all the routes that you've done. So you see this overlap around your area, and then you might have done a ride outside the country. There's a little loop there you did, and one over in Australia or whatever. But beyond that, everybody sort of understands the event line, the chart right here. This is your standard graph. You can set these metrics up on the X and Y axes as much as you want. You can dial them in with, I think it's like 5 different metrics on each axis you can play with. Scatter graph, distribution graphs, these are just other graphical ways to display data that you can again configure what's on each axis pretty simply. Force vectors, we talked about that. The coolest thing that I like is you can actually you can click on a section and hold and drag across and select a field, for example, a 1 hour section of your ride, a slice. And when you do that, it creates an auto lap, a temporary lap, and everything else in the display is coming from that auto lap that you just created. So all of your force vectors, you'll see these change. Your pedaling graph will change because it all relates to the section that you just selected.
So you mentioned earlier that it switches to the sprint detector turns on. Can you drill down on individual sprint like pedal strokes?
Yep.
Can you isolate that far?
Yep. That's what's cool, because if you see a spike, like a power spike, if you're like me, you're not a sprinter. If I'm going to hit a peak power number, I want to catch it. I don't want to be either side of that 1 second sample. I want to be like right in the middle of it. And so for me, that's a really cool thing. I'm seeing numbers that I've never seen before. Mainly the dogs. It's not really me. It's amazing what a bit of adrenaline will do for you, though. But yeah, no, you can really drill in and look at you can see every little detail that you want to check out. Yeah, because it gives you that clarity on the bottom axis. You're not looking at things this wide. All of a sudden, everything got twice as wide all of a sudden. So you can see that. We also do sitting and standing metrics. I don't know if you guys know that, but because we measure radial forces down the crank arm, we can actually show you how much you're sitting and how much you're standing. And a lot of other manufacturers are starting to do this now. We were the first to do it, and we continue to develop it and make it better. It's interesting, you do a ride, say, where you think you're standing a lot, and it still only totals out to about 13% of the ride. So it's just kind of interesting just to look at that stuff sometimes. But what's cool is if you're, say you're chasing a time up a Strava segment, for example, and you are trying to figure out how to get that last 10 seconds out of yourself. And you've done this thing multiple times and you keep coming up short and you're like, man, should I stand up and give it everything in that last 10 seconds or should I just sit down and just grind it out? What's better? I don't know what the answer is, but you can figure it out using that. Because you can now disseminate sitting and standing. Sprint detection, we talked about that. So yeah, when you create an interval, it'll show up right here. You click on power interval right there, and it will, let's see if it'll come up in there. We lost the screen there. And so yeah, you can see now, excuse me.
Tenths at the bottom, the timestamp is tenths of a second?
So 45 minutes and 50 seconds, but these are actually, you can actually go, you'll see they're they're actually half-second samples right there. Yep. So this 30-second sprint right here, this was actually mine when a dog chased me. It's the only time I get out of the saddle anymore. But 706 watts for 30 seconds. But it captured that. It also captured this 10-second one here, because I was at 875. So it's there. It's there, and it's grabbing it all. It's cool.
Just so you guys know, the dog reference that he's talking about, when you ride in Georgia and all these rural places, I know it well.
Yeah.
You'll have random dogs that aren't on leashes, and you actually set them up as sprint spots.
We actually call them RDs.
Yeah.
Random dogs. Yeah.
And they'll start chasing you. I actually wrecked years ago because one went right under my bike and I went tumbling.
Yeah.
Anyway, you
Yeah.
gotta get away.
Yeah. Enough about that. And by the way, I'm a dog lover. I've got 4 of them. I keep bringing them home. Yeah. What's that? That's quite a dog. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
How about data spikes, emission spikes, maybe, and gaps, low battery, something like that?
Yeah.
Does software deal with that in any automated way?
No, not really. But the way you would manage that is first of all, we want to figure out why it's happening, and sometimes it's mostly because of, again, in the very beginning we talked about magnet positioning, setup. I keep coming back to magnets, but that is really the core of most of the problems that we see. Beyond a straight up hardware failure, which is possible, of course it's electronics, but magnet positioning, if it's off a little bit, at higher cadences, you could have a misread for just a fraction of a second and you could have a data drop. That's the most common cause there. So again, what I said earlier is like if you get your setup perfect, take the extra time, do the setup right the first time, everything will go really smooth. You have less propensity for issues. But the software is only as good as, we can smooth data all day long, but we're not into smoothing data beyond taking out all the detail out of it. So we don't want to smooth it too much. Yeah.
About how many rides can you store on a computer before it gets storage?
I think it has about a 30 or 40 hour storage in the unit of rides. So it'll just start overriding itself after a period of time. So generally you want to make sure you upload that guy, for you guys, you want to upload it at least once a week if you're doing 30 hours a week, right?
That's what they tell me.
More about how to actually interpret the two main charts that are in my data, which is one is the pedaling efficiency, vector.
The vectors, yep.
And then the other one with the graph. And where do I go to learn more about how to interpret that? Yeah, like that one, okay.
Like this one here, yeah.
That one, and then there's the other graph is the one that has like 4.
Oh, and the pedaling graph, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and where do I go to learn more
Let me see if I can
what that data
pull something up here and show you guys something. Get online here. You guys got Wi-Fi in here? Of course you do. What's a good network in here to use? Summit BG. Yep.
That's real easy. That's the phone number. I think it's the phone number.
All right. We should have done this beforehand. I'll go into my Cyclosphere account and I'll kind of show you kind of what it looks like.
They're going to get you faster. So while we're waiting for that, I have a question. So I'm a data geek, so I think I've run into a limit. Really? There seems to be, you can only have like one of each type of chart on the Cyclosphere page. Like I'd like to have multiple of the
Oh, one of each different type of chart, you mean?
Well, you know, you have to go in and click to say, yeah, I figured out how to change all the data that's shown. But in some cases, I'd like to have the same type of chart with one showing me like cycling efficiency versus power and another one showing me left-right efficiency versus power
Okay.
underneath each other. But it seems like when I go to add, it's grayed out. Like it only lets me add one.
Right. Yeah, you can only have one type of chart per
Okay.
at once. Yeah, you can change the metrics. I know what you're trying to say. We'll see if we can't get that taken care of though. That'd be kind of cool. We get on?
What's going on? Yeah.
Oh, you got a hotspot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I could use my hotspot if that's what you
There
want.
you go.
Oh, thanks,
That's
man.
all right.
Appreciate it. All right. All right, let's go. All right. Can you guys see that? Is that big enough? We'll see, I guess, right? All right. So let's take a look at something here. Let's do, this was a good one. Just something for a good example. So this one, click on this. Analysis. So you know you guys can move these tiles around. You can drag these around and make them any kind of layout you want. One of the charts you might want to do before we get too much further is if you haven't added your device information at the bottom of the chart, you can do that. This guy right here at the bottom.
Can you increase the browser size? Just for the,
People at the back of the room.
yeah, just Apple Plus.
That better?
Yeah.
Okay. So the device information, it's not a standard chart, but you can add it. You just go up here to top where it says, you just hit the plus button there, and you can choose, and it's this one over here, device information right there. Just shows you where it's coming from. You know, obviously your serial number, your device is right there. If you've got DO2 in there, your battery amount, things like that. It's kind of cool. But so let's see. Let's look at a ride. So this is a ride I did. Actually, I did this with Chris Frederick a couple weeks ago. It's basically an out and back. But so this chart here you were talking about, the pedaling graph.
Yes.
So
That one and then
all right.
the other one that he showed.
All right, so what we've got here, if you look at across the bottom here, you've got 30, 60, 90, 120. These are degrees of the pedal stroke, okay? So 90 degrees would be 3 o'clock. 180 would be at the bottom at 6 o'clock. And if you look at the lines, these paired lines here together, I know it keeps popping up with that, but the color, let me move my finger here. Red and the blue line here refers to tangential force. Okay, so in other words, if you're looking at anything that's 90 degrees to the crank arm, that's tangent force. Okay. Anything, this is the zero line right here, right across the bottom here. This is starting at 0. Anything above that line is positive. Anything below that line is negative. Okay. So what we're seeing is my tangent force is increasing steadily as I get through 30, 60, 90, it peaks out at about 120, a little bit past 120. So at about 4 o'clock, okay? And then at about 4 o'clock, my tangent force starts to drop off a little bit because inevitably it's at 4 o'clock and I'm somehow, instead of pushing backwards, I'm actually pushing down still, okay? And it's starting to go more radial. And you'll see at the same point, my radial is starting to kick up and climb, okay? And my radial is going to peak out at 180.
Okay.
Guess where that is? That's at 6 o'clock. So now I'm seeing a peak of tangent force at about 4, a peak of tangent at about 6, and then it all goes to hell in a handbasket beyond 180. It drops off, and truthfully, what we want, that's the technical term, yeah. What we want is we want to get as much zero here as possible. So in a perfect world, at 180, you would want to see, well, perfect. Well, it's impossible to do this, but keep that tangent force nice and high and get rid of that radial force, if possible. But certainly you don't want any negative. You don't want to have any, so remember what I said, this is a zero line right here? See these, the red and the blue here? Dips down just a little bit, but
What if you take standing out? You've got standing highlighted, right? So that's going to skew your numbers a little bit.
no, that's standing,
Okay.
that's sitting.
Okay, so now you're seated. So
Yep.
it's a little different. So now your radial force is not quite as bad
Right,
as it was.
not quite as bad, yeah.
So when the radial force goes negative, is that the weight of the trailing leg?
So negative radial would be inwards.
Right.
If you can
No,
picture
I
that.
meant the tangential. When the tangential goes
Negative is, yeah.
That's the weight of the leg.
That's the weight of the leg. That's
backside.
backwards. That's going backwards, right? That's kicking back that way. So yeah. So we want to. This is a, you know, seated. I'm much better seated than when I stand. When I stand. Right. See that?
Now, what's the difference between the little, when you have the little average checkbox check when you turn it off? Because I see a slight change when I do that on mine, but I don't know when that goes to zero.
It goes to zero. You know
Is that
what?
because we don't have a time slice selected?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's on all laps.
I spent a lot of time with, I installed this thing Friday. I missed a ride because I was fooling around with it. And
Right.
Saturday, I was just like all over this.
Yep. But anyway, the two different colors for each tangent and radial represent different legs. So you can see clearly if somebody has an imbalance simply by seeing if you see a massive separation of those two lines at any one point. I'm a little bit off balance, but they track pretty true to each other. Bearing in mind I've got a 1 centimeter shorter leg. My left leg is a centimeter shorter than my right leg. So I've battled with that my whole life, and this is truthfully, if I'd have had this tool when I was racing, even when I was much younger, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I think it would have definitely had an impact on me in a positive way. It came to my, this tool really came to my knowledge and my understanding probably at the wrong time, right at the end of my career.
So the other plot which has the two circles
Yep.
on it, I mean, I know red is good and
Yep.
blue is not so wonderful, but
Yep.
what direction should those sections be?
So always the direction that they're looking right now. So red cranks, remember the cranks are turning in this direction?
Yeah.
Always. So you want, if you've done your magnet calibration correctly, they'll look like this.
Okay.
If you get on there and they're all like this and crossed over, and then you probably have to just redo your magnet cal.
Aiming them for them to be straight down or a little bit?
So give me a really good example. So 100% efficiency, 100% impossible, would be completely tangential the entire time.
If you had a robot doing it.
If you had a robot doing it, that's what 100% would look like, okay? Without any radial forces and always positive tangent, okay? And that would be perfectly 90 degrees the entire way around the circle, okay? That's not what you're shooting for, but that's optimum, okay? None of us are going to get to that point. But what's really interesting is if you look here, there's a couple of sections here on mine where I've got a couple of grayed out little air ticks here, like here and here. Gray simply means that it's neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. It has no bearing on rotation. It's still energy, and it's still taking that number down a little bit, but it's having no consequence on rotation. So, it's fruitless, essentially. So 6 o'clock, straight down. I've got a 12 o'clock tick at the top there, straight down. I don't know what that's all about. I mean, honestly.
So the goal is to have the blue as short as possible, and it doesn't really matter what direction the blue is. You just want it to be as short as possible.
I mean, you want to eliminate it as much as possible. Yeah. I mean, you'll get to the point where you will actually see on the back side here. See, I've got to have any. That's grey. A little bit of blue. You know, that could use. Grey is a transition between positive or negative. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good right there. I mean, and obviously, it translates to 45% on that leg. Yeah.
The length of the line is the amount of force?
Correct. The direction of the line is the direction. The color simply indicates direction, positive or negative.
Can you click on the L and the R and talk about the torque?
Where are you?
Just click on the letter L.
Oh, here?
Do all to figure that out.
Yep. So torque effectiveness is really just, it's really based on tangent force only. It's simply saying where is the maximum amount of positive tangent force occurring, what phase of the pedal stroke, notwithstanding any negative. So it's
If you see a bunch of red like at the top, that's probably not good. You want most.
probably not good. I don't really like torque effectiveness as a metric. I don't think it's very useful because it doesn't give me all the information that I want to see. The force vectors give me way more. This is one-dimensional, this is multi-dimensional. And other manufacturers use this as their big selling point because they can't give you this. And this is as good as they can get. So, you know, if you really understand this, you say, well, you know, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock's where it's really all happening right through here. You can see here there's straight down right here. That's why that's like that.
Yeah, the left is just the tangential component.
Correct. Yep. Yep. So, and again, if you look at the backside here, there's nothing going on the backside here at all as far as any tangent force at all.
Some other manufacturers, like Rotor, offer a polar view.
Mm-hmm.
Is that roughly equivalent to the force vectors?
Not really, because they don't do any negative force. They don't capture the, they don't, see, we'll show you what you're doing, but also what's slowing the crank rotation down. Right. And that's really the key to it. It's like you could be the strongest rider in the world and dragging that foot through the back and you're absorbing so much energy. It's like, who's done any running here at all? I mean, I only run when a dog's chasing me, but or bear. I'll switch to bears. But if you're a runner and you heel strike every time your foot hits the ground, well, you'll hurt yourself, but also it's really inefficient because you're absorbing a ton of energy as your foot hits the ground, and then you've got to reapply that energy and then come off that foot again, right? So dragging your foot through the back of the pedal strokes, just like heel striking, you're putting in all this effort coming down, but you're not doing anything to help it and offset that energy on the way through. So if you can be a midfoot, if you can land on that midfoot and keep that forward momentum going as you strike and keep moving forwards, that's just like lifting your foot through the back of the stroke. Yeah. Oh.
See it movement in
Sorry.
Can you see it in real time on the metrics to see kind of where your pedal stroke is? So you can kind of get an idea of where it is?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're on the CF500 using this guy, you mean? Yeah, on the screen. Yeah, you have this on screen. You can see this on screen.
Oh, but can you go back and analyze it on the computer?
Yeah, you sure can. You sure can. So let's go back here. Let's put this back to vectors. And then let's see. I'm just going to select that little section there. And then if I click on that event there, that should. Why it's not working. Hang on. Go back to all laps. Now I'm going to make a liar out of myself. I have done this. Why is it not working? There we go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So if you wanted to space through and see, yeah, see what's happening. So this is 1 second at a time, essentially. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. So I don't know if any of you will. I mean, put it this way. This tool is over-engineered. You can do absolutely anything you want to see. It's in here. It's up to you how you want to utilize it. There's obviously some recommended elements that are better than others, but you guys can do whatever you want with this, any which way. Great coaches they love it because everybody's got their own way of of drilling down and seeing things. Yeah.
So is there any plan to have an app which could actually read all of the telestroke data in real time and put it on a bigger screen than, I'm old. I have to wear a magnifier to see this.
No,
See the detail.
I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just thinking, You sure you don't? You sure you haven't been in the office lately or anything? I mean,
Get those as I'm pedaling to
Yeah.
see what's happening.
Yeah,
If I
if-
change something, what happens.
yeah.
Video on the trainer.
If you just hang out,
Sit,
if you
yeah, sit on the trainer.
if you hang out a little bit and watch this space for about 6 more months, you'll probably, yeah.
No, because, I think like the old coffee trainers used to have things that, it didn't do that, but it
Right.
would show you things in
Yeah.
real time on a big.
Truthfully, we have a PC tool right now that can run that. It's pretty clunky. I use it for a lot of demonstrations and expos. It's not really consumer friendly, but we're going to have something of that nature available to the public before the end of the year. It's going to be I get every now and then we get questions like that, and we really want to use that because it's a great little feature. It's easy. It's relatively easy to do, and fitters can use it. People can use it at home. They can throw it on their screen, whatever. It's a great party trick. Hold my beer, watch this, call 911. That kind of thing. So, right. Yeah. What else? You guys are all smarter. Look at
How
you.
about, are you guys looking at historical, like, I want to see if I'm getting better, not with an individual ride, but like 6 months from now, I want to look at
Mm-hmm.
this. So, is there a way that I can go and say,
Yep.
I want to see my pedaling efficiency or left-right balance
Yep.
versus cadence starting,
Yep.
as it was 6 months ago?
Yep. So in the app that we were talking about earlier, there is that segment comparison. You can define a segment as being something that is either geographical, like what you all know segments right now is Strava, or it could be something defined by a set of parameters. Say, for example, every time you break 75 RPMs and you terminate at 95 RPMs, that's a segment, right? And it'll define that as a segment. So it could be, if you were riding at 75 to 95 all day long, it's a really long segment.
Yeah.
But it's calling that a segment. Or every time you break a certain power output, 250 watts, for example, 300 watts, 180 watts, whatever it is, you can define it.
Is there a report that will track my improvements in this across time though, like January to May? And in January you averaged 26%, and by February you're at 27%.
So that's something else that we need to work on. So here's the one thing. Like, we don't aim to be Training Peaks. Training Peaks doesn't aim to be us. Training Peaks really good at longitudinal projection and longitudinal tracking. We're really good at day-to-day short-term capture. We're branching out that longitudinal stuff a little bit with the segment comparison, but certainly there is that. They have their place in that world.
Do they have a channel for it at this point? They don't.
No, we'd like to talk to those guys about that. They're open to it, and we'd like to talk to them a little bit more about it. I think as this technology, when we've seen growth hand over fist, like year on year here, so it's starting to really get good for us, and you guys have been just a great example of how instrumental that works. But as that develops, we'll probably see more need for that, yeah, for sure. Good point. Yes?
Yeah, I was thinking a similar thing, is that it would be nice to be able to share the data. I'm generating piles and piles and piles of data to share it with my coach
Yep.
without having to take
Yep.
my computer over and log on for him.
Yeah. So the other thing you can do for right now, what we suggest, and Hollow West Coast Citadel, or
I port the fit file, the Training Peaks, but
yeah, but if you want to show him this data, the best thing we can offer right now is share the login and password with your coach, and let him log in and see your data.
Would there be an option to, like, speaking as a coach, again, you guys aren't in the Training Peaks thing, but if you can, like, with Zert, I can build groups.
We're working on making a coach version of Cyclosphere, is what I've heard. So that's coming. There'll be some. Hopefully, my idea would be to basically have just like Training Peaks with a sidebar, and you can basically have your stable of athletes right there, and you can just click on each one of them and go into their stuff and see what's it. Yep.
Yeah, because that, 100 racers.
Absolutely.
You were about to say something about Hollow West Coast.
No, I was going to say they're in that exact same situation. They got 18 riders. Bobby Julick's coaching them, and Bobby calls me and he's like, "Hey, how do I share this data with? How do I get the guys to share data with me?" I'm like, "Share a password and login right now, man."
It's nice because when it loads on Training Peaks, it includes the Cyclosphere link right there. You just click it, it takes you.
Click on it, it takes you right there.
All I need is a sign in, and I
Yep.
can look right away.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nice.
So that's it's the best workaround we can provide right now. Yeah.
Is that it, guys, on questions? Since we're a little over time?
No, go ahead. What's your question?
Is there, I've asked this before, have you worked on saving your pages that you have on the head unit to Cyclosphere, so in case you lose the head unit, you can like get all that data configuration back on the head unit?
So,
You have to thumb through all the pages.
no, we are working on a solution for that right now, though. Yeah, that actually came up. It was a bit of a sore point for me in my territory this last December. We had an issue, a replacement head unit, and this guy was losing his mind because it took him forever to get everything just so. And
Or if you reset, if you have to completely like clean it out.
Right.
Like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the head unit's
Yeah.
kind of a pain to do the drag thing.
Yeah, so-
If you could actually just do basic configuration on here.
So
you have to
one-
set Wi-Fi up at first.
one quick note on that. It's a touch capacitor. You guys, I'm sure you all know what that is. So it's not a static touch, so you need to apply good force into the screen. You won't break it, but just apply deliberate downward force into the screen. If you fairy touch it like this, you'll end up touching all kinds of things you don't need to. And you'll end up with,
Take some adjustment.
yeah,
That was the
it
first
does.
thing Where I was like, okay, be deliberate.
Yeah,
How you do it.
very deliberate.
Otherwise you just skip through menus all over and you drag yourself.
On the plus side, how many times have you gone to use your iPhone with gloves on and gone, damn it, it doesn't work? That's why we did this. Yeah, I get we get it from both sides. I think there's no easy answer to it.
Just knowing that
Yep.
that's
Just understand it. That's all. Just be very deliberate about it. You know, if you dribble on it, if you've got gloves on, if it's snowing, you know, if the place is flooded, it's going to work. You know, I'm trying to think of what happened to you guys here in California. You've had horrible things happen the last couple of years. What's that?
Earthquakes.
Yeah, and earthquakes. Yeah, I don't know if it's earthquake proof, but anyway, you know, yeah.
Has anyone not set up their unit?
Okay.
So the biggest thing that I want to hit home from this whole thing is support and having.
Yep.
We are here. Well, hold on. Nathan is here.
Yeah, actually, that is actually. Let me go back to that.
Seriously, to answer any questions, you can call in, you can call me, you can call whatever. But we want to make sure you guys are taken care of and definitely.
Yeah. So.
Because this is the most important tool of all, using the computer.
So my contact information is right there. You can call me 7 days a week.
I'll send that out, you guys. You don't have
No,
to
I need the picture. Now I have the claim to fame.
He's pointing to it.
Call, seriously, I tell everybody this, and my girlfriend cringes every time I say it, but seriously, weekends, call me. If you have a problem, call me. Problems don't understand weekends. They always happen at the worst time. I understand that. You know, most people ride their bikes on weekends, and you know, most dealer support lines are only open Monday through Friday. Call me. Or email me if you don't want to call me. That's fine. You can also email this address too, cycle-sports@pioneerusa.com. That's our general email bin. Everything goes in there. Bunch of spam goes in there too. I clean that out daily. But I also filter through and find your emails. And I do respond straight away.
And they have an 800 number too you can call. So like when I was having trouble setting mine up, I was able to just call and it like pull the batteries out,
Yeah.
puts it back in. Like those.
That being said, I'm not disrespecting anybody at 1-800.
Basic things.
Yeah, that's been generous, yeah. I wish they could handle more, but yeah, you guys will be fine. If you get hung up on anything, though, just give me a shout. Seriously, we can solve it in five seconds.